Welcome to another episode of The GLAS Room. This special edition is all about the Christmas star, which hopefully you were able to catch a glance of during the winter solstice this year. I am Adam McCulloch with GLAS Education, and joining me as always is my co-host Katya Gosman, a PhD candidate astrophysicist at the University of Michigan, and she's going to explain some of the scientific explanations for the Christmas star, and together we're going to help explain one of the most likely solutions to the Star of Bethlehem. We are going to be observing the Christmas star. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the night sky that you are looking at right now. Obviously, we have some of the quintessential bright objects in our sky, like the moon and multiple planets. And if you even look a little farther off to the east, you will find the Pleiades, one of the beautiful open clusters in our night sky. But the focus of our sky for tonight is going to be down to the southwest, where we have two planets aligned very, very close together, and we're going to get a closer look at those two planets. Now, conjunctions this close do not happen very often. The last time that Saturn and Jupiter passed this close together in our night sky was over 800 years ago. It isn't exactly a normal planetary conjunction. As we've been referring to this as the Christmas star, and as we zoom farther and farther out, or you look at it with the naked eye, you can see why it's referred to as the Christmas star as opposed to Christmas stars. Jupiter and Saturn are crossing so close together in the sky that the normal observer would only see them as one bright object, as opposed to two separate objects. The Star of Bethlehem is an often discussed phenomena by archaeoastronomers. Many theories have been proposed to explain a sudden appearance of an exceptionally bright star in the heavens. This star is what was believed to have led the wise men to the newborn king.
There are multiple astronomical possibilities to explain the appearance of a bright star in the sky. In ancient times, changes in the heavens were easily noticed and documented as they relied upon their observations for many aspects of their culture, and there also wasn't that much light pollution back then. We are going to cover a few of the possible explanations for the Star of Bethlehem now. One thing we should first make clear is what ancient astronomers exactly meant when they referred to stars, as it has a different meaning than what we think of now. Back then, a star was any source of light in the sky that was not the sun or the moon. Anything that was a point of light was referred to as a star, and there were different types of them. Planets were referred to as wandering stars, comets as hairy stars, and meteors as falling stars. So, what was the bright star that appeared in the sky then? So, one of the explanations that is a possibility is the fact that it could have been a nova or a supernova, which can sometimes appear as new stars in the night sky. In terms of astrophysics, these two are very different things, but to the naked eye, the effect is the same. A star is seen where none was seen before, i.e. there is a new star in the sky. We now know that there is indeed a much fainter star that exists in that spot of the sky before the outburst happens, and after it, the star will then return to its original brightness after the bright nova episode. Nova, though, only stay bright usually for about a few days or a few weeks. Another visiting object found in our skies could be a comet. These are some of the most famous celestial visitors, and thanks to many different ancient cultures, we have quite the complete record of them. Comets have not always been a welcome guest in the night, though. Many ancient cultures saw them as signifiers of doom and often instilled panic in people. They often last for multiple weeks or even months in our night sky. Another one of our possibilities is planets, or wandering stars, which were notable and tracked closely by ancient astronomers. Since planets do not have a stationary location in the night sky, they eventually cross paths or align with other objects in the night sky. Tonight is one of those instances, as Jupiter and Saturn's paths cross in the sky. there are many other types of conjunctions, as many of the wandering stars eventually cross paths. Each of these had a unique interpretation by ancient astrologers. There are some very well-kept astronomical records from the ancient world, so we are familiar when certain nova happened. If the wise men traveled for multiple months and then saw the star again, it would not line up with the timeline we have, with there being two different nova. The records don't suggest that there were two different nova that would have lasted long enough to explain the wise men going on their journey, so this is not a very good explanation. Comets, on the other hand, are quite an interesting option, as they can be quite bright and last for a decent amount of time. However, we know thanks to ancient records that there was a bright comet in this time period, but it did not last long enough in the sky to give us our answer. On top of this, comets were seen very commonly as symbols of impending doom or signifying terrible events. Therefore, imagery like this is really only a possible explanation, as opposed to being the most likely. This brings us to one of the more likely theories for the Star of Bethlehem. As mentioned earlier, planetary conjunctions often had many interpretations and could occur in various constellations and in various ways. In the year 7 BC, there was a rare occurrence of a triple conjunction. This means that the pair of planets crossed paths in our skies 3 times over the course of 1 year. With this many conjunctions, it should be very simple to determine if it lines up with our possible timeline.
Now that we know a little bit more about some of the objects that could have created a star to come out of nowhere and appear as a new star in the sky, we need to talk a little bit about some of the context in order to help narrow down what this new star could have been. First, the wise men were actually not kings, as they are often portrayed, but actually magi, or ancient astrologers, most likely from Babylon or even further east in modern-day Iraq or Iran. The wise men were signaled by the Star of Bethlehem to travel to Jerusalem to seek the newborn king. The star appeared in the east, but that also signaled them to go west to Jerusalem. So we know that they did not follow this star all the way to Jerusalem, only that they followed the star from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, where they came and arrived to find Jesus being upwards of a couple of months old to even a year or 2 years old. So we know they arrived soon after Jesus' birth, but not directly at his birth. So we have to figure out exactly when was Jesus born. The Bible actually gives us 2 very good clues here. The first is that we know that Caesar's decree for a tax was issued in 8 BC, and it was also issued in the Bible before Mary and Joseph traveled to Bethlehem. We also know that King Herod was a crucial part of this story, as he was the one who told the wise men about the prophecy and where the newborn king would be born. And as we know from historical context, Herod actually died in about 4 BC. So we have our window. From 8 BC to 4 BC is about when we know that Jesus was born.
Ancient Greek actually has 2 words for the designation of east. If the wise men saw the star in the east, it could have originally been written as Anatole or Anatolai, the former meaning east or helical rising. Helical rising is simply when a planet is seen rising in the east just before the sun, so it rises right before dawn. Occasionally, this has been used to symbolize birth. The first conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn occurred in late May of 7 BC and would have definitely caught the attention of the Magi. To understand their interpretation, we have to understand first the association that planets had with astrology in their culture. Jupiter was seen as the king planet, as it is often the brightest object in the night sky after the moon. Saturn was often associated with the Jewish people as being their culture's special star. These 2 stars, coming together in the constellation Pisces, associated with the ancient Palestine, could easily suggest to the Magi the birth of a new king of the Jews. The second conjunction occurred in October of that year. This conjunction would have only either confirmed their journey or let them initialize it. The final conjunction occurred in December and is potentially the star that led the Magi to Jesus in Bethlehem. This conjunction would have appeared in the southwestern portion of the sky, and Bethlehem was southwest of Jerusalem, where the wise men would have been.
Now that we're familiar with the 3 conjunctions that happened in 7 BC, let's see if they line up with a timeline that kind of makes sense for the wise men traveling to Bethlehem. So as we mentioned earlier, we know that the wise men did not follow the star all the way from Babylon or further east to Bethlehem, but really saw the star that told them to travel to Jerusalem. As we know, Jupiter and Saturn had their heliacal rise early in April. And those 2 stars rising together above the sun would have rose in the east right before dawn. So this could have been the star in the east that sent them to Jerusalem. The first conjunction then occurred in late May, and this also could have been what began their journey or confirmed their suspicions. This would have caused them to consider traveling to Jerusalem, the capital of the Jewish people. Unfortunately, this conjunction occurring in late May meant that travel across the desert would be very, very difficult. So it's actually not unlikely that they would have waited a couple of months. If they had waited all the way until October 2nd, they would have seen the second conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, and that would have confirmed any suspicion that they had had before that they needed to travel to Jerusalem. We know from other contexts in other stories in history that traveling from the east to Jerusalem meant you had to go up and around the desert. So travel like this could take 4 weeks up to 2, 3, or even 4 months. We also know that it most likely was not 3 wise men, but more likely a large group of people traveling at once. A group like this traveling most likely would have taken at least 1 month and more likely 2. So if they had taken 2 months to get to Jerusalem, they would have been able to have talked to Herod and then seen the 3rd and final conjunction on December 1st. And this actually would have occurred in the southwest, and if they had followed that star, it turns out that Bethlehem is actually southwest of Jerusalem, and it's only about 6 or 7 miles and only a couple hours worth of travel. So the 3rd conjunction most likely was the Star of Bethlehem that led them from Jerusalem to Jesus. And today we want to celebrate this Christmas star, and it just so happens to occur on the winter solstice. We hope you enjoyed our presentation of the Christmas star, and from everyone here at GLAS Education, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.